Hello and welcome to a review of 2 Point Museum in my style, where I just let the game footage play in the background without modifying it in any sort of way, using it as a sort of a background to just kinda, sit here and talk with y'all people, because that's what I enjoy doing. I don't enjoy scripting these, so I just enjoy letting myself let out my own opinion without any sort of prior preparation. So consider all of these videos to be very freestyled. Anyway, I've already spent about 50 hours playing 2 Point Museum. I do have an intention to mostly 100% it. I think that the deeper I go, the more I let go of the notion of 100%ing it. I'm gonna say why in a minute, but effectively, if you're gonna try to 100% this game, it's gonna get a bit frustrating, but at the same time, if I didn't like the game, I wouldn't have invested 50 hours into it. That's not a thing that you do with a game that you dislike. So, 2 Point Museum is a simulation game from 2 Point Studios, similar to 2 Point Hospital and 2 Point Campus. Except that this time, you're managing a museum, which I will give it to them is a very unique sort of choice. I would have expected a 2 Point Zoo or a 2 Point Mall or even a 2 Point Skyscraper. Those would have been a much more done areas, but they went with something that is genuinely unique, and I'm gonna give them props for that. The game, primary game loop, the mechanics, the furnishings and everything, it's fairly easy to follow through, very self-explanatory. Building rooms is easy, managing your museum is fairly easy. It is, I would say, a fairly casual game. There is no constraints that would stop you from just picking it up and going with it. Primary loop tends to include sending your guys onto missions, getting exhibits to show in your museum, training your guys so that they can go on further missions. Then later on, when you progress in this game, stopping robbers, as you can see me doing in the footage right now. I tend to micromanage stopping robbers because then I can absolutely make sure that none of my exhibits get stolen. There's also fires that can happen. So there's like that sort of level disasters that keep your attention on your museum. Even when you progress quite far into the game, you can't just automate it. At the very least, it's not easy to automate it. Like, you potentially could, but it's not easy. Now, this game has fairly frustrating requirements sometimes for progression, unless you're willing to play it differently than I do, which is a very interesting thing to say. I think that I am my biggest enemy in this game. First of all, I like all my exhibits to be of the highest quality. Secondly, I don't like having two of the same exhibit in the same museum. Thirdly, I like the themed museum to stay in that theme for the most part. So unless the game forces me to navigate into a different theme, I won't. These are the kind of things that I have set in my mind. And I also noticed that a lot of people that are kind of not super into this game also had similar setups in their mind. We are in the Science Museum. Nothing stops me right now from hiring a couple more regular relic guys and just pivoting my expeditions into finding some more relics. There are, of course, science-based objectives that I would need to do regardless, but when it comes to just padding out my levels. When it comes to just meeting regular buzz, I could do it that way. I could also do that by showcasing more of the same item, as that would also pad out my levels and how excited everyone is to see my museum. And I also could stop punishing myself by trying to get everything to be the highest quality. But you see, when you get things to be the highest quality, the game gives you a golden sticker, and something in my brain tells me that that is important. On top of that, your guests are a lot more excited about items that are of the highest quality. However, if you're playing with that mindset, it's gonna be a grind set, and the grind set will probably get you down. So, first of all, the quality of the item is RNG. What item you're gonna get from a specific place is RNG. What are the stats that are gonna appear on that item, like buff bonuses, like, hey, this adds some entertainment, or this item is boring. That is also RNG, making the whole thing a bit grindy, I would say. I'm currently playing in the Science Museum, which isn't too bad, except that the Science Museum asks me to reach levels that I can't if I only exhibit science items that are of the best quality. Like, literally right now you are observing Mirta getting stuck at level 17. I was trying to push this a little bit, but later on, after finishing recording this, I played with the Science Museum a bit further, and I got stuck at like level 24, and I needed to reach level 28 in order to progress the story at 4 stars. That is entirely impossible unless I start repeating exhibits, or I go and get exhibits that are not the same as the theme. Like, this is me contemplating on, should I just go out and try and get myself a relic of a more regular variety just to pad out my levels, and then I decide against it. I decide to continue grinding out science because something's wrong with our brain and we really like to compartmentalize, and I think that the game wants you to compartmentalize a lot less than I would like to. And I think that the whole issue of me compartmentalizing comes in from the fact that there's 5 different museums with 5 distinct ways of being. Like, there is the regular relic / plant museum. I would like to call it that way because this is the first time when you see plants. There is a ghost museum. There is a fish museum. There is a space museum, and there is a science museum. I am currently in the science museum. I don't want to mix different versions of museums together and make it into one big mishmash, even though the game would be so much easier if I just allowed it to be one big mishmash. If you're just gonna be playing this game casually, as in you don't care about getting all of the exhibits to be the highest quality possible, you don't care about researching every single exhibit to the maximum, which would require you to get multiples of the same exhibit. If you don't care about not mixing the styles and making every museum feel extra unique, you will find this game to probably be a breeze. Like, you're just gonna make yourself a cup of tea, you're gonna come in and you're just gonna be like, this is so chill, so casual, this is like kind of easy and it's just satisfying. But when you have those personal rules that for some reason I carry, where I want my exhibits to be highest quality, I want them to be researched to the maximum, I don't want to showcase 2 of the same exhibit because I feel like that devalues my museum a little bit, because when I go to a museum, I don't really look at 5 copies of Mona Lisa, there's one copy of Mona Lisa, you know? That sort of thing. Items are supposed to be unique, my brain tells me. And when I go to themed museum, I want it to stick to that one theme, my brain tells me. And that is just not how you're supposed to be playing this game. Because that's how I'm playing this game, I'm probably getting stuck progression-wise a lot more than I should. But unless you're playing sandbox, progression-wise technically is all that there is. So is it really wrong? And also, that's another slowdown. Sometimes you will be kind of punished if you don't have employees of the right level. Like, for example, you will click into the map to select to go to a place, and it will tell you that unless your combined employees are level 15, somebody is gonna get missing in action. So you can still send off that expedition, you can still get rewards from it, but you're gonna lose an employee. When that happens, I like to grind out levels instead of losing my employees. When I get dead set on grinding out levels, that can take a while. It's not super bad when they're at low level, but if I send them on an expedition, the average amount of experience that they all get is like 40. And at higher levels, you can need like 2000 experience to level up, which makes this a very, very slow thing. I have grinded out levels before through things like just assigning a singular assistant to work in like the shop over and over and over again, simply because if I assign them to work in shop, they're getting experience every like certain amount of seconds, because there are a lot of people that are like checking out. But not all jobs have that available. If you need your expert to level up, the easiest way to do it is to make them analyze items, but common items that are of like low prestige level, you could say, like they're not pristine, they're just common, those will get analyzed in like a second. A pristine item will give you more experience for analyzing it. But that is to say that Mirta has been so hardcore at playing a casual game that she has guides as to how to grind the experience in a casual game. And I'm gonna say that there's probably something wrong with me there, that is a thing. For just the general atmosphere, the music is calming. The radio announcer gives you a lot of jokes. There's always something to do because, once again, there are fires, there are robbers, there's like special events where like school will be showing up and they will want to see specific things, mostly entertainment items when it's a school, or VIP might be coming over. You're not really idling. There isn't like a point where you're like, okay, this is boring. But there is quite a few points where I'm like, okay, I got stuck non-progressing this. It's easier when you're progressing the first few stars on like a singular museum or like a different museum. The game lets you in gently, it gives you a pretty good tutorial, it allows you to explore, your eyes will be like star-filled, everything will be like so awesome and new, but when your museums start getting to 2 to 3 stars, and the maximum that the museum can get to is like 5 stars, that is when the game kind of gives you a bit more grindy objectives, and then you're like, okay, I will either have heavy losses, or my 2 hours of gameplay time will be spent grinding my employees out. It has these kind of stops that are not very fun, I must say, but if you enjoy the atmosphere, if you just enjoy being and playing in your museum, you're probably gonna have like no problem with that. And if you don't like super enjoy having to do all these grindy like objectives, you could technically be playing a sandbox where it's just up to you to explore and build your museum however you like, because that is an option, and it's really cool that that is an option. Overall, I know that this is very long-winded because I can't just deliver my thoughts easily. I would say that if you're a casual gamer and you don't care about maxing out the game, this is probably an easy 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 game, because it is easy. It is, for the most part, you can meet these objectives differently than I am doing to make it easier on you. Like, you could hire throwaway employees and just don't care that they're going missing in action, for example, which would stop you from needing to grind as much as I'm grinding. But if you're like a hardcore gamer that for some reason brought a hardcore mentality into a casual game, the game can easily be like a 6 to a 7 out of 10 in my opinion. Personally, for me, it's like a probably between like 7 and 8, because I am trying to take it slow. I do enjoy the atmosphere, but I do frustrate myself. I would enjoy if there was like less RNG. I would enjoy it more if like the game stopped trying to push me to get items that don't belong in the science museum game, or like stop trying to push me to put plants inside my ghost museum. It is a ghost museum, after all. Don't make me get fish inside my relic museum. That is the most regular type of museum. I don't want fish there. You see what I mean? It is hard because it is rather grindy, because I got it into my head that I want it to be perfect. And I also want it to be themed. And if you don't have those two issues, it's gonna be a much, much better experience. I gotta say, I played other 2-point titles, and I had 2-point Campus on the Game Pass, and for some reason it didn't hold my attention for super long. People are telling me that in 2-point Campus there isn't much to do in between years when new students enroll. So like, you build up your facility and then for the most part you just sit there and watch it. So perhaps I lost my engagement because it was too casual. Now I have 2-point Hospital. 2-point Hospital I found quite on the stressful side, mostly because there's always like pressures of budget and pressures of like big accidents where they will just give you an influx of people and you have to play around pretty cramped spaces. It just becomes, it is hard. Set to hit shelves soon. 2-point Museum isn't hard, but there's also things to do. So it would land somewhere in between these, and I think that's why it kept my attention for so long and why I'm trying to max these museums out to begin with. That's another thing, it loves to throw a wrench into your party. So for example, the wrench in this one was that all of my robot janitors started malfunctioning at one point, which wasn't super nice. It was scaring off all of my clientele and I couldn't do anything about it for a while. In the Ghost Museum, you just like have like portals opening and ghosts invading you at points. They add these kind of little stressful events when you're playing through the story because it keeps you engaged. There's always something to do. Every star is technically a new star when you're trying to get a star for your museum. It gets a bit more complex until that complexity completely ends at 5 stars because you have completed the campaign and there's nothing really that you absolutely must do in that museum outside of progress to a different one. At first though, the game does make you progress different museums at the same time, just so that you get to have a feel for different museums and so that you're not sticking to a singular place for too long, but they're kind of getting a bit of variety that also helps with the game flow. But anyways, this has been me yammering for quite a while because this is a game that I love, but at the same time, it has flaws, babies. It has flaws, and I think some of these flaws are intentional just so that you have more game time. But I'm not entirely sure if I dig that line of thinking, because my perfectionist self really doesn't want to let go of perfectionism, and I'm gonna give you a bit of a hint that in this museum I'm already letting go of perfectionism, because in order to perfect one of the items, I would need the item to reveal robbers to me 30 times. Unfortunately, when robberies happen, it's random, and most of the time it is my police force, that my security guards that notice the robbers, not the item that's supposed to detect robbers 30 times. When it comes to Science Museum, it's also really, really hard to track these like little side objectives on objects. So I don't actually know how many robbers that item has revealed yet, but unless it reveals 30 robbers, I could never get it to pristine, which means that I'll have to leave the Science Museum not 100%ed, and that might be eating at me a little bit, if not a lot. So, yeah. The only reason this game is kinda eating at me is because I'm here trying to 100% what is otherwise a very, very casual game. I think I already made it clear. I think for majority of the population, this is gonna be a super good experience. But if you're a little bit like me, just like take note and keep that information in mind. If you do play 2-point titles, please tell me what you think about them. I know that this review is very not structured and was very ranty, but this is... I was trying to think about what to say, and this is just something that really seared into my mind because this is my opinion on the game, so this is what I think about it. But at the same time, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have invested 50 hours. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't even be trying to 100% it, though I think I'm just gonna settle on getting all the stars on all the museums. I think that is a much more reasonable goal, and it might save me some headspace. Or I don't know, I might just like finish everything and then come back to this one going, so about that item, it has to be pristine. Well, we're gonna see. But that has been my review of 2-Point Museum. Get it if you're a casual person that's not too stuck up on the museum's theming and that doesn't seek to 100% absolutely everything that they see. If you're a hardcore player that would for some reason get stuck on those like 2 areas, you're gonna suffer a little, just like I'm suffering a little, but if you're still chill, you're still probably gonna enjoy it. That is my verdict. Overall, though, gameplay kinda on the easy side. It would be hard to lose. I'm gonna say it like that. But also, milestone progressions sometimes be grindy, so moving forward is sometimes, I can't really say hard, but like takes a while and keeps you busy, but also completely failing hard. Unless, of course, you completely avoid some game mechanics like sponsorships for some reason. Or marketing. But I don't. So I had absolutely no problems when it comes to be running the museum in the game. Like, I would say that you would need to try to lose when it comes to the main scenario. Anyway, I'm waffling again. Thank you for listening to my opinion for so long. If you like these kind of waffly videos, check out the rest of my channel. I do a lot of waffly videos on different subjects, mind you. I explore tabletop, spirituality, gaming. I do a lot of things. So make sure that this is your vibe. And if it is your vibe, I would appreciate if you would subscribe. And if you already subscribed, thank you so much. I hope I haven't bored you and I have delivered my point across. Pretty sure I have delivered my points across several times by this point because that does happen with me. Thank you so much for my Patreon supporters, and I hope that I get to see you in my other videos. Toodaloo.